Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Had Powers of Subaru from Re:0 Part 2. Before we start, please go support the Thewitchcult for writing that awesome fanfic. Chapter 11, Worries. Ring ring ring, please wake up Nii-chan, ring ring ring, please wake up Nii-ch. After turning off the alarm, he immediately looked around. As usual, he touched his torso. Everything was in place. He looked at the date. It had changed. The day went smoothly. I did it again, it's hard to get rid of a habit. After saying that, he sighed and lay down in bed again. Several days have passed since he left that loop. Despite knowing it, every time he woke up he did the same ritual of observing his surroundings, inspecting his body and checking the date. He got so used to doing it that it became a habit. I should get rid of it soon. If someone saw me, they would think I act like an idiot. After saying that, he was about to leave his room when he saw someone looking at him from his door. He could only say that. Issei suddenly remembered. He was no longer living alone with his parents. She had been there all the time. Did she hear him? Issei-san, don't worry, I would never think you're a fool. She heard him. Damn it. After hearing that, Issei with a sigh touched his forehead. He should have locked the door. Asia, forget what you saw. Did my mother send you? I'll be down in a second. After saying that, Asia apologized and left his room. Although he was grateful that she was the one who saw him acting that way, he was still embarrassed. This is very embarrassing, although this decision is still the right one. By order of Rias, Asia was now staying at his house. According to her, to make him responsible in some way for the favor she asked him for. Asia herself suggested it when Rias asked her where she would like to live. It's lucky that my danger radar doesn't sound with Asia. It would be a headache to be on alert all the time. For some reason he couldn't feel danger when Asia was near him. Despite having become a demon, his body didn't detect her as an enemy. It's probably because he met her when she was human. Still, sleeping near a demon. Although it sounds strange, I'm not worried. If it were another person, I couldn't even sleep. But it's Asia. Her personality wouldn't let her do anything violent. Besides, she's too innocent. As he convinced himself in this way, Issei wondered if that was trusting someone or not. In his opinion, the meaning of trust was something confusing. Well, I should go down. After saying that, he started his day. As he said goodbye to his parents, he and Asia started walking towards the academy. It was undoubtedly convenient that his parents accepted Asia so easily. Although it was even more convenient that Asia could enroll in the academy at this time of year. The influence of Rias-senpai's family is very big, it seems. Although he knew it, it was still surprising. He glanced at Asia. At that moment a question arose. Although it wasn't his business, he had to ask her. Asia, why did you agree to become a demon? She was supposed to be a nun who worshipped God. Although she told him the reasons why she was despised, choosing to become a demon was totally contradictory to her beliefs. After hearing that question, she suddenly stopped. He did the same. If it's not my business, you can ignore the question. After saying that, Asia replied. And no worries, it's totally normal for you to ask why I accepted. That's because of a wish I have. Our Rias-sama promised to make it come true. He could see how she grabbed her suitcase tightly as she looked down. I see. Rias guessed her wish. If his wish in life were exposed and someone with enough power committed to making it come true, he would undoubtedly also accept, although of course, his wish in life is impossible for someone to guess, and he can't even mention it. She continued speaking. Is it hypocritical, isn't it? I have dedicated myself to serving God all my life. Even at night I try to pray to him despite the pain it causes me. But I decided to become a demon at the slightest opportunity to see that I can make my wish come true. Besides being hypocritical, I am selfish. While saying that, he noticed her tone getting lower and lower. It seems that he touched on a topic that she was still dealing with. Rias was able to convince her by discovering her wish. But she couldn't take away all her doubts. Are you regretful? If so, I'll try to talk to Rias. While saying that, he put his hand on her shoulder, although he sensed that it was impossible to make her human again. At least they could discuss alternatives. Not at all, in fact, I'm very happy with the way things are now. Rias-sama kept her promise, now I have to keep my promise to be useful to her as her bishop. While saying that, she showed Issei a genuine smile. Apparently she is happy right now, although. If you ever need help or don't want to be part of all this anymore, just trust me. It's my duty to help you. After all, I was the one who got you into all this. After saying that, they resumed their walk. He was the one who got her into this. Although it was her decision to become a demon, he felt guilty for fully involving her in that world. See clearly, Issei-san, I trust you a lot. After all, thanks to you I met such nice people. After saying that, he noticed her blush. Apparently she was getting along well with everyone at the academy. Even Rias, who was skeptical when he brought her to the academy, quickly became fond of her. It seems that everyone in the club was treating her well too. About what you mentioned before. I don't think you're hypocritical. At that time you were dealing with being used by fallen angels and possibly dying. Rias offered you an escape that God at that time did not offer you. Besides, the fact that you still trust him shows how faithful you are despite everything. She was then between a rock and a hard place. In the loop where she died at the hands of that fallen angel. Although he couldn't see Asia's death, he was sure they would kill her or use her in some other way because of her sacred gear that could heal both demons and fallen angels. Besides, what's wrong with being selfish? Seeking our own happiness I don't think should be punished in any way. Don't blame yourself for that. There's nothing wrong with seeking happiness. Even he is right now looking for a way to live with everything that comes his way to be okay and live normally. If seeking your own happiness is being selfish, everyone would be selfish in their own way. Thank you, Issei-san. He could see her teary eyes. Apparently he was able to alleviate her concerns, at least for now. Chapter 12, Worries, Part 2. Tick-tack, 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 tack, tick-tack. That sound is annoying. An irritated voice was heard in the club room. Are you sure she's ready for something like this? Even though I don't have much knowledge, isn't it dangerous? As the brown-haired boy said that, he fixed his gaze on the red-haired girl who was sitting behind a desk. You're worrying too much. She'll carry a summoning seal. In case she's in danger, I'll go to her aid immediately. As she said that, she showed him a small piece of paper between her fingers, on which was drawn a red circle. You're being very overprotective, aren't you? Issei-kun. As the boy next to him said those words with an amused smile, Issei immediately showed an annoyed face. It's normal, isn't it? What kind of person would voluntarily summon demons to sell their soul? Only a madman would do something like that. After saying that, Issei noticed a pain in his left arm. Next to him was a white-haired girl who was pinching him. I'll let go of me, fool. That hurts. After saying that with an annoyed face, she let go of him. Your attitude is very annoying, Issei-senpai. While touching his arm, the girl told him that every time he said something like that, she would pinch him or verbally insult him. He found that the best way not to make her angrier was not to reply. You're wrong about something, Issei. There aren't many humans left who use their life to make a contract with us. Normally they use objects and valuable things as exchange, even money. While Rias looked at him with an amused smile, she told him that today would be the first time Asia would make a contract with a human. When Issei found out, he was skeptical. Doing something like that wouldn't be dangerous. He wondered. Hyoudo-kun. Sometimes you act very adorable despite your attitude. While Akeno teased him in that way, he ignored her and directed his gaze at Asia, who was a little nervous in the center of the club. Asia, are you sure you want to do this? After asking her that question, she looked him in the eyes. I'm very grateful that you're worried, Issei-san, but this seems to be normal for demons. I must get used to it. While she answered him with determination, he couldn't oppose her. If it was what she wanted to do, he couldn't stop her even though he was still worried. Alright, if you're still worried, Kaneko will accompany her on the first day. Will that be okay? With a sigh, Rias said that. With her by her side, at least on the first day, it should be okay. Kaneko nodded when she heard her name and positioned herself next to Asia. I'll activate the magic circle. After a few seconds, a red magic circle appeared under both of them, illuminating the whole club. In 1 second, they both disappeared. That still impresses me. After unconsciously whispering that, he remembered he had to ask Rias a question. Rias-senpai, we haven't talked about that matter yet about the fallen angels. Did they take care of them? After asking that, he got a little nervous. Theoretically, that matter should have been resolved already. Yes, you don't have to worry, although the information you gave us was a bit incorrect. There weren't just fallen angels and the priests, there were dozens more priests. Upon hearing that, Issei was surprised. So it wasn't just them, there were many more. Were you able to interrogate someone? Their goal, what exactly was it? While asking her that question, he looked into her eyes. Asia, they thought they could use a ritual to snatch away her sacred gear, although it seems they had a setback since they lost their leader a week before. After saying that, Rias looked at Issei with a smile, which meant, Rainer, when I killed that fallen angel, their plans were radically changed. She was the leader then. In case they had completed the ritual, would Asia have died? He could hear that fallen angel mention Yuma's real name, although in his opinion her fake name suited her better. Anyway, if their goal was to obtain her sacred gear, a method like that. Yes, she would undoubtedly have died. They planned to do the ritual that same day. As soon as she arrived, losing their leader was a big blow, so they had to hurry. At that moment, it was Akeno who answered his question. It seems that everyone in the club had participated in the battle, although they didn't highlight it. It seems it was easy for them to take care of the fallen angels, even priests who are supposed to be their natural enemies. Wait a minute. They got rid of everyone, didn't they? After that guy came to mind, the lunatic who once decapitated him, he asked Rias that question to make sure he had also died, although it was Kiba who answered. There was a guy, a priest, Kaneko-chan, and I fought with him, but he escaped. He was very skilled with the sword. We couldn't prevent him from escaping. Saying that with a serious expression, he answered Issei. Even without knowing it, he knew who had escaped. That guy was similar to him. If he saw that he was at a disadvantage and wouldn't win, he would run away like a coward. No doubt the two are very similar to each other. We took care of most of them. That guy was the only one who escaped. You don't have to worry. While Rias said that, Issei closed his eyes. He still couldn't feel at ease. That guy survived. He still had unfinished business with him, although for now he would leave it like that. He shouldn't let his guard down. Chapter 13. Rumors. Ring, 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 wake up Onii-chan. Ring, 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 wake up Onii. After turning off the alarm, I immediately inspect his chest. Everything is normal. I inspect his surroundings. Nothing out of the ordinary. I look at the date. The day went by without problems. Damn, in the end I won't be able to get rid of this stupid habit. After saying that, I sigh. Yesterday Asia had gone with the Academy's mascot to make a contract with a human. Luckily everything went smoothly and they managed to sign the contract. Rias was impressed that she managed to sign a contract at the first attempt. Even though Asia told me he was a strange guy as I thought, everything still went well. After sighing again, his gaze got distracted looking at the ceiling. He couldn't sleep well last night. When they told him that Madman was still alive, he stayed alert. He still hasn't forgotten that he decapitated him once. That left a mark on his psyche. Besides, dying again in such a short period of time felt disgusting. He thought he could finally live normally, but not much time passed, and he died. The return point updated. Now I'm much more confused. This ability is something I don't understand, and that scares me a little. When that man decapitated him, he didn't go back a week before. He returned just a few minutes before dying. He couldn't find an explanation for this change. Besides, he still didn't understand why he didn't enter a death loop like Yuma's. I was able to choose another path and didn't die. When I did the same in the previous loop, Yuuma always found a way to kill me the same day. This was something he didn't understand. There were still many questions he couldn't answer. If he could control the return point, everything would be easier. Although he still didn't know even the basics of this power, anyway. For now, I should go take a bath. When he set out to start his day, he supported his hand on the bed, but it felt somewhat different. This WH? He stopped. At that moment he felt his skin bristle up. Something was wrong, he squeezed. This felt different. It was different. He immediately lifted the sheets. This W, what does it mean? He got up from his bed and immediately backed away. A girl was lying next to him. How did he not notice? The same thing happened with Asia. Every time he was more distracted and let things like this pass. Wait a moment. The sensation from before. Could it be? Is it morning already? As the girl got up, she yawned while asking him that question. What are you doing here? And no. In the first place. Why are you naked? While covering his face with one hand, he asked her that question. He had to think. He didn't remember doing anything strange yesterday. He arrived home with Asia, had dinner with his parents, then went to his room and fell asleep. Nothing out of the ordinary. But he woke up next to a girl. No, he woke up with the most popular girl in the academy who was completely naked in his bed. Did they? Don't worry, I'm still a virgin. As he blushed more and more, his gaze unconsciously went to her completely exposed breasts. Damn, his old habits were coming back. So the rumors were true. You like big breasts, don't you? As he rested his chin on his hand, he said that. For several days, all sorts of rumors about him have been circulating. From him blackmailing the student council president to taking advantage of Asia's innocence. Although it didn't affect him too much since there were always rumors about him, it was still annoying. Plus, he didn't have to be a genius to know who was behind those rumors. Those idiots will pay. Given his close relationship with Asia and his recent approach to the girls in the occult club, his friends were more than jealous of him, so it was no surprise that they were behind these rumors, although. First of all, can you get dressed? It's uncomfortable talking like this. Even knowing that she is a demon, he had a certain weakness for this kind of stimulus, so he wasn't thinking clearly at this moment. Are you so nervous about seeing me naked? Looking at your usual attitude towards us demons, I expected another reaction. It's adorable to see you in that state. While Rias laughed at Issei's current state, she began to dress. While he turned his back for her to dress, he asked her a question. You still haven't answered me. What were you doing and naked? After repeating the same question again, Rias answered. I don't like sleeping with clothes on. She doesn't like it? No, in the first place. What are you doing in my house? I don't remember letting you in. After calming down a bit, he got straight to the point. Oh, that. I forgot to ask you something at the club, so I came in a magic circle, but you were already sleeping. After saying that casually, Issei thought about how easy it would be for Rias to kill him while he was sleeping. Magic circles are a big problem. That doesn't explain why you were sleeping in my bed. After questioning that point, Rias told Issei to turn around, so he did. I got sleepy and didn't want to go back to the club, that's all. With her academy uniform on, Rias answered him that way. Was that all? No, there must be something hidden behind all this. Although he doubted whether to ask her. Knock, knock, knock. Issei-san, please come down. Breakfast is ready. At that moment he heard Asia on the other side of the door, which made him nervous quickly. Hey, can you go back to the club through a magic circle? I don't want misunderstandings. After saying that to Rias, she looked at him with amused eyes. She was enjoying this situation. Why should I? Asia will surely understand. That stupid girl. If Asia found him with Rias like this, she would misunderstand. No matter how much he explains, it will be in vain. The last thing he wants now is another headache. He had enough with the rumors at school. If you promise to come to the club room during recess, I'll leave by magic circle. Damn it, that was her goal from the start. She cornered him this way to make sure he came to the club. He usually visited sauna during recess. In few cases did he go to the occult club. He only did it when it came to Asia. Maybe that's why people thought he was blackmailing sauna, since he was with her almost every day. In any case. Alright, I promise. Now go. After saying that with clear nervousness, she activated a magic circle and disappeared in a second. Issei-san? When Asia opened the door, Issei was standing in the middle of the room. Ah, Asia. Sorry, I just woke up. I'll be down in a moment. After saying that nervously, he indicated for her to go down. She nodded and left the room. Damn it! That girl is such a headache. While touching his forehead with his finger, he said that. What did she want now? Was it about Asia? Or did she want to convince him again to join her faction? There was no choice but to go to the club, he thought. Well? Why did you want me here? Also, why is there no one else? After recess arrived, Issei immediately headed to the occult club. He wanted to deal with this matter as quickly as possible. That's simple. I wanted to talk to you alone, Issei. Have you been following the physical training I recommended? Rias asked him that question. She was the one who recommended a training plan to strengthen his body, as he needed to improve in order to defend himself and make his sacred gear useful. Yes, I have followed it. I have noticed some improvements, but nothing extraordinary. He lied. He has noticed many improvements. His sacred gear for some reason evolved suddenly. Now the red glove covered almost his entire arm and now had 2 golden spikes at each corner. Thanks to this evolution, it became much easier for him to double his power without a great burden on his body, although he still had a limit of increases. In a hypothetical case, he believes he could face Yuuma on equal terms, although he wouldn't know if he could win. I see, Issei, could you show me your sacred gear? I want to confirm something. Chapter 14, Trust. Issei was in the club room sitting in front of the president. They were the only two in the club when she asked him that unusual question. Why was she asking him this? No, in the first place this was suspicious. Did she know about the evolution of his sacred gear? If so, how could she guess? With increasingly suspicious eyes, Issei looked at Rias with a serious expression while crossing his arms. Isn't it a bit excessive to look at me with that level of distrust? After all, you've already seen me naked. As Rias said that, she lightly touched her chest with her finger while smiling. Dismissing those meaningless words, Issei sharpened his eyes even more. This was not a trivial matter, so he decided to ask. Why are you asking me this? Please, don't say another nonsense, get to the point. After saying that with a serious face, he became more and more defensive. Although it wouldn't be strange for Rias to ask him this normally, she had never actually done it before. Plus, asking him just days after he evolved was suspicious. Plus, she had been sleeping near him today. Was that her real intention for staying at his house? How rude, you won't be popular with girls if you keep up that attitude. Showing feigned annoyance, Rias told him that. Issei was getting more and more irritated by Rias's attitude. He had already decided to break this cooperation in a few days. With this level of progress, in a few days he wouldn't need her protection. He knew that Rias and Sauna wouldn't be hostile if he broke his cooperation with them. Sauna made it clear to him, but now. Don't beat around the bush, why are you asking me this? No, actually, when did you realize I evolved? There was no point in hiding it anymore. It was too obvious that she realized his sacred gear had changed. This was something he had kept hidden from everyone, even from Sauna. This was his trump card, in case they broke their alliance and attacked him first. But they had seen through him. This made him feel too vulnerable. Evolving, I see. I wasn't wrong, Issei. Can you show it to me? Damn it, what should he do? The reason for not letting anyone know that his sacred gear had evolved was for a desperate case where they attacked him first. But she had found out. He felt too vulnerable right now. Should he attack? But if he did, he would be at a great numerical advantage. Plus his firepower was still low. Damn it, he got so used to being with demons that now he regretted leaving so many cracks in his defense. Even in something as basic as his house there were deep cracks. After all, he couldn't prevent them from teleporting to his house through a magic circle whenever they wanted. He was still a beginner in the supernatural. Issei, aren't you overthinking things? I know you have your reasons for not trusting us, but reaching this level is exaggerated. I just want to see your sacred gear to adapt it to your training and make it more effective. Rias could notice how Issei was acting very cautiously and was watching every move she made. She could even notice how his eyes were wandering around the club looking for an exit. This seemed very excessive, even paranoid to her. No, I think this level of distrust is fine. After all, tell me, how could I trust you? You lied to me about why you stayed overnight at my house. That's reason enough for the little trust one had in you to disappear. He was not a fool. The reason why Rias stayed to sleep at his house, specifically in his bed, was because she did not trust Issei's words in the first place. She wanted to make sure of the danger of his sacred gear. No, rather the potential danger it would represent for her clan. That was what Issei deduced in this short period of time. Although an important question arose. How did you find out? If you want me to stop being defensive, speak sincerely. If it was by surveillance, I don't think I left an opening, even if someone from your entourage was watching me all day. Was it today, right? While I was sleeping you did something. Issei made sure that no one watched him when he used his sacred gear. He became very meticulous in that work, since he did not have opportunities to train very often. Also, revealing his trump card would leave him at a colossal disadvantage, like the one he is in now. He was careless without a doubt. Yes, you're right, it was today. The method I used, the evil pieces, they are very useful in these cases, you know? Wow, suddenly you turned pale. Do you dislike the idea of becoming a demon so much? Don't worry, the evil pieces have another function, which is to indicate how many pieces are needed to reincarnate someone. I haven't done anything to you. Rias looked with a touch of annoyance at Issei's reaction and quickly dismissed his unfounded concerns due to his excessive distrust. I see. Issei stuttered a bit and touched his forehead with relief. It was true. It made no sense for her to do something like that. Besides, he didn't notice any change since he woke up this morning. According to Asia, his strength increased a lot when he became a demon, and he didn't feel anything like that. Usually few pieces would be needed to reincarnate someone with your sacred gear. But if I tried to reincarnate you now as a demon, my 8 pawns would be necessary to reincarnate you. It's an absurdly high figure. That's why I deduced that you had something more than that twice critical. Besides, you confirmed it yourself. Your sacred gear is different from a twice critical. I would apologize for lying to you this morning, but you weren't very sincere either. While Rias continued talking in a somewhat childish and annoying tone, Issei was able to calm down a bit. In all this conversation, he could not notice that she was hostile in any way. Was he really overreacting? From the beginning he was on the defensive, and with some paranoia when Rias mentioned his sacred gear. He felt too vulnerable, even attacked when they discovered his trump card. If someone outside of this saw him, they would think he is completely crazy for acting like this. But anyway, it couldn't be helped. If he doesn't want to die, this level of paranoia is necessary to act at the right time and avoid death. Although it still bothers me that you hid it. Do you really not trust me at all? Remember that I am providing you with protection. Trusting me with these kinds of things is basic for your survival. While Rias crossed her arms, she looked at him with an annoyed face. Has she really not realized? The reason why he hid that information is too obvious. It was to defend himself from them in case of betrayal. Is she pretending? Although it doesn't seem. Is it normal, isn't it? I dislike the supernatural. Even if you guys are good people, I can't just trust you guys. I came to trust a supernatural being, and he tried to kill me. He said that while diverting his gaze and crossing his legs with disdain. Well, as long as you don't do it again, though. Don't you trust Asia? When I teleported to your house, I saw you sleeping peacefully. Aren't you too comfortable with a supernatural being near you while you sleep? After pointing out a flaw in his reasoning, Issei immediately responded with annoyance. It's different. I don't trust her. I trust her inability to do anything violent. That's very different. After dropping those words, Rias let out a small laugh. That's trusting someone, you know? Even if you deny it, it's too obvious that you trust her enough to turn your back on her while sleeping. I want to reach that level of trust with you, even though you don't make it easy for me. Although, I also lied to you. I used the evil pieces while you were sleeping because I was curious about how many pieces I would need to reincarnate you into a demon. The trust between us from now on must be high to work well together. Now, would you show me your sacred gear? Break will soon be over. Chapter 15. Observers. His protection, he really doesn't think he needs it much right now. Even if he refuses to show his sacred gear, nothing will happen. But straining relations won't bring anything good. Besides, this relationship for now has been very beneficial, since he hasn't had setbacks these days. You're a headache. While saying that, he put his left hand in front of Rias, Already in these circumstances refusing is foolish, he must look for other alternatives from now on. Trusting his sacred gear as his trump card was a miscalculation. They can easily see his potential through those evil pieces. Maybe he should look for similar objects? External objects could be a good alternative. After all, a light sword is very effective against demons. In a second the whole club room lit up. At that moment he invoked his sacred gear. A red metal arm covered almost his entire arm. Ah! He could only hear that come out of Rias' lips. He raised an eyebrow at that reaction. Was it so disgusting to see? Fried mentioned it to him when he attacked. Did it look very unaesthetic on his arm? After a few seconds Rias slowly got up from her desk. Her hair covered her eyes. What expression is she making? He wondered. At that moment she took him by the shoulders. What the hell? While trying to back away he couldn't. Damn, isn't this a very unusual strength for a girl? At that moment Rias spoke to him. Issei, become my servant. No. Why? While Rias looked at him with pleading eyes he could only show an irritated face. Is this girl stupid? Even she mentioned it when she saw his reaction to the word, evil pieces. Plus he himself talked about it a few seconds ago. Now she asks him that? Can you let go of me? You're applying a lot of force, it's hurting. While Rias looked at him angrily for his previous answer, she still held him by the shoulders with force. She let go of him when she heard his plea. I'm sorry, I lost control for a moment. While calming her breath she sat back down in her chair. Why that reaction? Explain yourself. That reaction was very abrupt. Even he couldn't react to it. Why did she react like that? Red Dragon Emperor boosted gear, that's your sacred gear, Issei. While staring at his left arm she let that out, boosted gear. That name suits him very well now that he thinks about it. It's much better than twice critical, although. Red Dragon Emperor? That name, he remembers it. That name was undoubtedly something that was mentioned to him before, although when was it? He doesn't remember exactly. I think you've already noticed, but that sacred gear is special. No, it's the most special among all the existing sacred gears. It's a Longinus. While saying that, she looked him in the eyes with a serious look. Sighing, he looked at Rias. He was annoyed when she spoke with technicalities. Could you speak more clearly? What does that specifically mean? Well, I'll speak clearly then. That sacred gear is a weapon capable of killing even God. Weapon capable of killing even God, ha! Issei was lying in his bed. After his talk with Rias he went home. It was already night. She told him that his sacred gear is one of the 13 Longinus created by the God of the Bible. That's not something I can take as a joke, although. The name of the Red Dragon Emperor he heard at once. Although he doesn't remember exactly when it was. Although he does remember a bit of the conversation. It was in one of those stupid dreams I think I told him. In one of the loops he remembers that he dreamed of a dragon who introduced himself as the Red Dragon Emperor, but he immediately dismissed it as a silly dream. I think I called him a stupid lizard and that he would wake me up from that stupid dream. That did it happen in a failed loop? Even now it's hard to separate those memories. Issei sometimes had small errors in his timeline. Sometimes when he was with his parents or friends he mentioned events that happened in previous loops but not in this one, that brought him awkward moments. If the information Rias told me is true, then it's an opportunity one can't waste. As he got up from his bed, he walked a little and positioned himself in the middle of his room. Closing his eyes he concentrated. Are you listening to me? Red Emperor Dragon, I need to talk to you. According to Rias, the soul of the Red Emperor Dragon was sealed in his sacred gear. The dream he had that time must have been his soul manifesting, then. If you're listening, respond, bastard, I need to ask you some questions. Nothing happened. Does he have to sleep to contact him like last time? When he thought about going to sleep, something came to his brain. An external thought to his own came to him. It was as if his own internal voice delivered a message. Are you kidding me? I'm supposed to be your carrier, stupid. Why do you act like this? The external thought that came to him was, I won't talk to someone so rude. He gets it. It was in this loop when he had that dream. He understands that he's angry, but he's an all-powerful ancient dragon, isn't he? Why does he act in such a childish way? You know what? It doesn't matter. Just tell me something. When I was with that fallen angel, why didn't you warn me? If this guy has been with him all this time, why didn't he help him even once? Many months and failed loops passed before he contacted him, and he only did it in the successful loop. I know that, but you wouldn't have helped me, even if I hadn't known. He told him because you already knew. That's true, but he knew it after dying many times, and in none of those deaths did he warn him about that. He would change the focus to his question better, since it makes no sense to continue like this. Why were you able to contact me through my dreams that day? Why didn't he contact him in previous loops? There's something he's overlooking. It was due to your extraordinary mental resistance. I must say I've never seen anything like it. At that moment his sacred gear was invoked without having done it intentionally, and he heard a voice. Finally you come out to talk. Mental resistance makes sense. Although your character is immature, you are very clever and quick to process things. You will be a worthy carrier. While he was telling him those meaningless compliments, he quickly asked him, Is what Rias said true? To surpass a god, is it possible with this sacred gear? He still doesn't trust Rias' words, so he asked the responsible for power directly. If you want to reach that kind of power, it will take you a long time. Even your whole life may not be enough to reach all my potential, but it's possible. So it's not an exaggeration, although it feels a bit weird to be talking to his sacred gear. At that moment a doubt crossed his mind. What happens to you in case I die? The soul of the Red Emperor Dragon. If Issei dies, will he also die? If so, their destinies would be linked. In that hypothetical case, could he fully trust someone who would share his same fate? I will pass to the next carrier, although it would be a great pity since you have a great potential to face even defeat the White. It's normal, it's a sacred gear. Even if it has a soul, it will only pass to the next carrier when the previous one dies. It's a pity. Right now the best thing will be to get information. White, no, that doesn't matter now. Right now I have cracks in my defense. I need to close those cracks starting with the magic circles. Is there any way to prevent them from teleporting here? Is it because of that redhead girl? That would be very easy. Just claim this place as your domain. That way they won't be able to easily enter here. I see, it's possible, although domain? Explain it better. Wait, have you been watching and listening to everything? Noticing that, his skin bristled a bit. Since the day you called me a stupid lizard, you should thank me for speaking to you. At that moment his mind began to work. If it was since that day he could hear his murmurs, what he told Yuuma, then he knows he can come back from death? He must ask him, if he can talk about this with someone else then. At that moment he could hear his sacred gear let out a small sound of confusion, then he heard the dragon start to talk. Boy, one question: why are the observers looking at you so intensely? Chapter 16, Observers Part 2. Upon hearing those words, he felt his skin prickling for a moment. Observers. What do you mean? He remembers saying that someone was watching him in a not-so-serious way, but is it true? There's no problem in telling you. After all, they have already set an eye on you. As Issei sat on his bed, he looked at his sacred gear to continue. The observers, or spectators as you want to call them, are the beings who watch us, even if it is God himself or the beast of the apocalypse. No one can escape their gaze. Although what did you do to make them look at you in that way? Their gaze on you is chilling. Spectators, are they something like a god? Well, he just mentioned God too. Are they something above a god? Wait a second, if that's true, were they the ones who gave him this power? Wait, before he needs to confirm something. I want to ask you a question. When I killed that fallen angel, did you hear what I said to her? He needs to confirm it. From the beginning, the attitude of the Red Dragon Emperor is not the attitude of someone who knows his situation. If he was watching him and knows about his power, wouldn't he know why those beings are watching him? When you killed the fallen angel, I was able to observe everything, although now that you mention it, some parts of your conversation with her are somewhat blurry to me. I must say it was a great performance against a supernatural being a human. I'm still impressed that you noticed her nature so soon and acted according to the situation. He understands he didn't hear him. It doesn't seem like he's acting, so if that's the case, he can't reveal it to him, since he will die if he does. But did something intervene so that he wouldn't hear him? If that's the case. I see. About those observers, do you have any other information? If there is any more information, he needs to know it. it's easy to deduce why they have their eyes fixed on him, since if they were the ones who gave him this power, they watch him so that he doesn't tell anyone about his power. They could even be the ones who prevented the Red Dragon Emperor from hearing his conversation. Even that they are the ones who force his restarts. Not really, this is the only information I have about them. It will depend on you whether you believe me or not. Issei closed his eyes for a moment. It's a shame, then. How did you get that information in the first place? Give me all the details. He needs the maximum information he can get about them. The information was due to one of my previous carriers. I'll start with the first person who detected them. That guy, my old carrier, was a really kind and good-hearted man for much of his life. But that moldable and good personality was his downfall. A person in whom he placed his trust betrayed him by poisoning his drink. Thanks to my intervention, he was able to survive. But that experience marked him deeply. After surviving with great anger, he killed the person who betrayed him. After that, he voluntarily exiled himself far from any civilization as a hermit. The main reason was to investigate some beings that he could perceive when he was between life and death. He gave them the name of observers. What happened to him? He died young due to his great obsession with those beings. Even in his last moments he said that those guys were watching him mockingly, as if his life was just entertainment for them. I actually thought he was really demented, but after he died and passed on to the next bearers I noticed their gaze too. I see. As Issei looked at the ceiling, he couldn't say anything else. It seems that now he will have to deal with that gaze too. His point of investigation will be those beings right now. There is a great possibility that they are the ones responsible for this power. There's no way to contact them, is there? The observers, didn't your previous bearer's investigation make much progress? No, it didn't make much progress at all. The only thing he discovered is that they can't intervene directly in this world. That's why he gave them that name, because they can only observe. Issei sighed. What will he do now? It's not possible to contact them. Apparently not many people know about these beings. Even the Dragon Emperor didn't know. Only because of the bearer of that time could he notice them. It will be difficult to get more information even in the supernatural world. About your question of why they look at me, I really don't know. I didn't know they existed in the first place. If they can't intervene, shouldn't we ignore their gaze? Right now let's focus on a more urgent matter. Discarding the previous conversation and ignoring those beings for now, Issei asked the Red Dragon Emperor about how to assert his dominion in this place to avoid the magic circles. Chapter 17. Unwanted Interest. Issei. With a thoughtful and somewhat melancholic face, Rias mentioned the name of the boy who had left the occult club a few hours ago. Resting her head on some papers on her desk, she could only sigh. After all, he continued to refuse every request to join her clan, which was frustrating considering the circumstances. Issei, if it's you. Sighing again, she closed her eyes. Since the day she saw him, when she peeked through the club window, making eye contact with him that morning, she had a hunch, a strange thought that told her she had to make him hers at all costs. When she teleported to the park that day and saw that fallen angel dead, she knew she had not been mistaken, which is why she regretted the decision she made. If only she had turned Issei into her slave that day. Although having a slave who resents me would have been counterproductive, how frustrating. Sighing again, she didn't know what to do to have him by her side. She offered him all sorts of things, money, fame, power, but nothing caught his attention in the slightest. She even offered him his own harem, having heard from his friends, those two boys, that it was his dream, but that didn't work either. She even jokingly suggested that she could give him her virginity in exchange, but he refused almost immediately. Although she said it as a joke, it had hurt her pride quite a bit. Maybe that's why she played that joke on him this morning. Anyway, knowing that nothing she offered caught his attention, she began to ask him directly or indirectly to join her clan almost every day, as if it were a routine, although she only received refusals. If it's you, I'm sure that. She didn't know the reason or why, but every time she was near him, she could feel a strong sense of security, as if he could do anything he set his mind to, even when she knew that right now he was as weak as a low-class demon, no, even weaker than that. Because of that contradictory and comforting feeling, she coveted him more and more. I should talk to him tomorrow. Opening her eyes and leaning back in her chair, she whispered that, setting aside her musings, she prepared to get up from her desk when suddenly, a white light manifested in the middle of the club room. Frowning immediately, a figure she recognized well appeared in the middle of the club, causing her mood to deteriorate rapidly, instinctively biting her lip in frustration. Is that really enough? With a visibly confused face, Issei asked the Red Dragon Emperor if the instructions he had given were correct. After all, the instructions were too simple. To assert his dominion, all he had to do was draw a magical circle that he would indicate in the middle of his room and imbue it with a little magical power. Just that, although the only thing that seemed a bit annoying was, although I must draw it with my own blood, right? It was actually a minor inconvenience. Exactly, it is essential to do it with your blood, as it will serve as a link to connect it with my dragon essence. It wasn't that big of a deal, although if it were a too large magical circle, he would need too much blood. Getting up from his bed, he went to his nightstand, opened the drawer, and took out a small knife for cutting fruit. I'm not that good at anatomy, but this vein should release enough. Tell me the shape of the magical circle. As he got up from his bed and stood in the middle of his room, he directed the knife to his wrist. While amplifying his vision to not make a mistake in the cut, something suddenly happened. Partner, we have a visitor. Right where Issei was standing, a red magic circle was drawn, illuminating the entire room. Instinctively stepping back, he stared intently at the center of his room. Is this Rias-senpai? Sharpening his gaze, he began to wonder, why is she here? Is it because of his sacred gear? Maybe she was trying to convince him again to join her clan. After all, she is stubborn in that sense. Or could it be that she noticed what he was trying to do a few seconds ago? After all, Rias appeared in the park after killing Yuuma because he thought of her at that moment. Did she read his intentions? Materializing in the middle of his room, Rias quickly glanced around his room before fixing her gaze on him. Was she angry? Noticing an unusual look in her, Issei was sitting on his bed, staring at her intently. The knife he had moments ago, he hid it under his pillow. Anticipating Rias, Issei was the first to speak. Rias-senpai, what are you doing here? Interrupting his words suddenly, she jumped towards him, like a wild animal, taking him by surprise. Falling backwards on his bed, Rias was on top of him, immobilizing his two arms, facing him. Rias parted her lips to speak, although he was still surprised by what she would say. He certainly did not imagine this at all. Issei, please take my virginity. Lying on his bed, and being immobilized by Rias, Issei could only put on a blank face upon hearing what she said, although he quickly dismissed it as another of her follies. Trying to force his way out of her grip, he achieved nothing, only making Rias' grip firmer. Issei, please, this is urgent. Feeling Rias' grip stronger on his wrists, he could only give up trying to free himself and look her in the face. Could you stop these stupidities? No matter how much you try, I will not join your clan. Dismissing her words as another empty attempt to get him to join her clan, he spoke seriously while looking into her eyes. Although his room was dark, he could see Rias perfectly. Is it because he has surpassed human limits? Observing her closely, the expression he saw on her when she spoke those words was one of annoyance. I see. Uttering those words, Rias tightened her grip on Issei's wrists a bit more, releasing a small sound of pain. Issei was putting on an increasingly annoyed face. As he looked at Issei's expression, a light of understanding came to Rias, realizing that Issei would not take her seriously if she did not act more directly. HMMH. Rias brought her face close to Issei's and abruptly joined her lips with his, totally surprised. He could only open his eyes in surprise. So that's what kissing felt like? It was the first thought that came to him, although it was very fleeting. Kaya. Letting out a small scream, Rias suddenly pulled away from Issei's face, with wide eyes. Why you? Did you bite me? With a thin thread of blood coming out of her mouth, Rias was in shock. After all, in her first kiss, something she had cherished so dearly, the boy she gave it to, had bitten her. Chapter 18, Unwanted Interest Part 2. Why you bit me? With a shocked expression, Rias almost shouted that, although she held back because of the late hour. Also, because it would be inconvenient if Asia woke up at this moment. In any case, Although she expected a reaction from Issei, she never anticipated that he would literally bite her lip to the point of making her bleed. After all, even Issei was a man, not common in attitude, but ultimately a man. A girl like her kissing him should have made him feel a bit of excitement, at the very least. Issei looked at Rias with a slightly red face, both on his cheeks and lips, as Rias's blood also stained his lips. Noticing that the grip on his wrists had loosened enough, he broke free and took Rias by the arm. Pulling her towards him and turning the tables, it was now Issei who was on top of Rias, holding her wrists. With a still surprised face, she looked at Issei, who showed a slight blush on his cheeks but hid it with an obvious annoyance. "What are you playing at? Coming to my house, asking me to take your virginity and forcing me to kiss you. If this is a joke, it's not funny, it's disgusting." With irritation and annoyance in his voice, his grip on Rias's wrists tightened, though he knew she could break free if she wanted. That's why he was considering invoking his sacred gear to hold her even tighter, though it seemed unnecessary, as Rias made no attempt to escape. "Do you dislike kissing me that much? Am I not your type?" With blood on her lips, Rias slightly lowered her gaze and showed a playful smile, looking into Issei's eyes. It seemed she had recovered from the shock of being bitten on her first kiss. Saying that only amplified Issei's irritation. He didn't know why she was doing this, and it bothered him. He was too confused at the moment, since everything had been so sudden. Breaking eye contact with Issei, Rias's gaze shifted to the side, and with a sigh she spoke. "This is not a game, Issei. We need to do it quickly. I'll give you a proper explanation after we finish." Rias' right hand that Issei was holding suddenly let go and grabbed Issei's arm. "Is it your first time too?" Taking Issei's hand from his wrist, she directed it towards her chest, causing Issei's hand to squeeze one of her breasts. "Do you still think it's a joke?" Feeling the softness in the palm of his hand, he unconsciously squeezed a little. Feeling through her uniform, he immediately compared it to how it felt this morning when he accidentally squeezed them when she was naked. He bit his lip immediately, realizing that he was getting too involved in this. "It's already late." Though bewildered by Rias's words, a few seconds later he felt it too. In the middle of the room, a white magical circle appeared, illuminating the place. Issei immediately turned his gaze there. From the magical circle emerged a woman. Upon seeing her, Issei was nothing but frozen, with beautiful silver hair and deep blue eyes that looked at him with an indifferent expression that highlighted her beauty even more. He unconsciously whispered, "A maid?" The woman who had come out of the magical circle was wearing a maid's outfit. Although he had seen too many maid cosplays, nothing compared to this. The person wearing it somehow exuded the air of a true maid, but that wasn't what caught his attention the most. After all, he was trembling at the moment. Although he could hide it, he couldn't help it. His body was telling him to immediately get away from this place, no, from that person. This was unlike anything he had felt before. Master Surzek would be really sad if he saw this unpleasant and disgusting scene. Upon uttering those words, Issei swallowed hard. Surzek? No, that wasn't important. First of all, who was this person who emitted such an unpleasant aura in the first place? Just by being in front of her, for some reason, he felt the urge to vomit and to get away as soon as possible. It was as if the sense of danger he felt towards demons had multiplied hundreds of times. Moving his hand away from Rias's chest, Issei sat on the bed with a drop of sweat on his cheek. Rias could only sigh and get up from the bed, fixing her disheveled uniform. She stood up to position herself in front of Issei to confront the maid. "My body is mine, what I try to do with it is my business, and it should not concern anyone else." Crossing her arms and looking at her with a furrowed brow, Rias spoke in an almost hostile tone of voice to the maid. Although she hardly made any expression, she just looked at Rias in the same indifferent way. "Besides, don't try to belittle him like that. I won't let it pass even if you are my brother's queen." Issei was sitting on the bed, listening to their exchange of words with a feigned indifferent face while hiding his clear nervousness about this situation. After all, things had happened too quickly. It seems he has now become involved in some family dispute, or something of the sort, since Rias mentioned her brother. Moreover, by the word queen, he could assume that this woman in front of him was just a slave serving Rias's brother. If this feeling of horror was caused by a slave like her, even if she was the queen, what kind of monster would the king be? He knew this woman would bring him trouble at some point. Ha! He sighed unconsciously, drawing the attention of the maid, who only looked at him for a second and then immediately ignored him to fix her gaze on Rias. It's true, but your duty as the heiress of the Gremry family should be above all else. Doing something that tarnishes its name is unacceptable. Passing by Rias, she now stood in front of Issei, looking into his eyes for unusually long seconds before she spoke. Excuse my late introduction, my name is Graphia. I serve the Gremry clan. Hearing her speak, Issei could notice a certain bewilderment on her part for a few seconds, as if she wasn't sure whether to introduce herself that way. Issei, I'm sorry for all this. I didn't want to involve you in these matters. Rias approached him and slightly bowed her head. Although she was apologizing, Issei insulted her mentally. After all, if she didn't want to involve him, she shouldn't have come here in the first place. He wanted to insult her, but that would only complicate things at the moment, so he nodded in agreement. Issei, isn't it? With a thoughtful face, the maid, Graphia, as she introduced herself a few seconds ago, whispered that. Although her whisper was loud enough for both to hear in this silent room, it seemed Rias had spoken or mentioned him to her. Yes, he's the one I was talking about with my brother. It was Rias who spoke upon hearing Graphia's whisper, which took Issei by surprise. Did she talk to her brother about him? I see the weak human who killed the fallen angel. With a face of understanding, Graphia's doubts were resolved. After all, it seemed too strange to her that Rias would be in this place with an ordinary human. Seeing Graphia's expression, Issei hesitated a bit. It seemed Rias hadn't told anyone yet about his sacred gear, the boosted gear. Maybe she talked about him with her clan and brother after killing Yuuma, confident that she would soon make him her servant. Issei, I'm sorry for this. I acted on impulse. Please forget everything that happened today. Apologizing again, Rias bowed her head for the second time, perhaps feeling guilty for the trouble she caused him and the embarrassing act she showed him. Ha, don't worry about it. Letting out a sigh, he closed his eyes and touched his forehead with his index finger. His head hurt, it was throbbing. Maybe it was because of Graphia's aura, although it was weaker now, probably because he was getting used to her presence. In any case, this was very sudden and stressful, he just wanted to rest at this point. Excuse the trouble, Issei-sama, if you'll excuse us now. Bowing her head, the maid and Rias disappeared through a magic circle. Throwing himself onto the bed, Issei lay down and closed his eyes, only able to sigh. So much had happened in such a short time that he couldn't properly sort out his thoughts. I have to go to the club tomorrow. He must ask Rias for explanations. What happened today was not normal. It was totally sudden and sporadic. But now that he had some time to reflect and think about what happened, he could get an idea of what was going on if he thought clearly. Gremry clan and virginity. One would have to be a fool not to connect those 2 points and get to the central reason for all the commotion a few seconds ago. Moreover, considering what that maid said, Rias is the heiress of that clan. Although Sauna had already mentioned it to him before, he had completely forgotten until now. But he still had one doubt. Why did she ask me? They had no relationship other than acquaintances. One could even say that from his side, he only received distrust. If there was someone more suitable for that, it would have been that guy Kiba. From what little he could observe of both, they had a good, pet-master relationship, so if she had asked him, he would have undoubtedly obeyed like the good lapdog he was. You really get in a bad mood when you think about that guy. Ignoring the words of the Red Dragon Emperor, Issei continued lying down with his eyes closed. Don't you think it was because she trusts you? That you dismiss that fact as unlikely worries me about you. Trust, that would be the only thing that would explain why she asked him. She might only have a good master-slave relationship with Kiba, but not the trust to go so far as to ask him something like that. But when did he earn that trust? How annoying! It's no use thinking about it. He'll ask her directly tomorrow. Are you not going to continue with what we were doing before we were interrupted? Indeed, affirming dominance to block the magic circles. No, we'll leave it for today. It would be bad to strain relations at this point. For now, he will leave it at that, after he clarifies everything that happened today. I suppose that is the most optimal and correct decision. After all, you will only isolate yourself if you continue with such an immature and paranoid attitude. He couldn't hear what the Red Dragon Emperor whispered, as at that moment, he fell into a deep sleep. Chapter 18.5 Love. In a world completely black, filled with shadows where a great blood-colored full moon stood out in the skies as if the end of the world had come and everything had ceased, as if evil had swept through everything in its path and swallowed this place with its wickedness, there he was. Unable to say anything, for he had no mouth, unable to feel anything, for he had no touch, unable to hear anything for he had no hearing, as if he could only be a mere spectator in this world full of shadows. Yet he was fine, it didn't matter to him, for he didn't need any of those things to feel his love. Empty, in this vast world of shadows there was no one, nobody was there was nothing, he understood nothing. The person could not comprehend why. He was waiting for her, but she did not appear. Perhaps he had made her angry? If that were the case, he wished to have a functional body with a functional heart to tear it out and hand it to her to show his deep remorse for having offended her. If that were not enough, he would give her his soul to please her, although deep down he knew that would not satisfy her. His soul had no value to her. Seconds passed as if they were hours and minutes as if they were years. He waited for her for so long, but she never came. In this deep despair, in this empty and loveless place, he finally remembered. Indeed, it was not yet time to see her, for he was not dead. Upon realizing this, he wished for the moment of his death. He longed to die, he longed to see her again, so he would wait for his death with joy to feel her love once more. Chapter 19 Conditions. Getting up from his bed in an agitated manner, he quickly looked around. With his breath ragged, he touched his forehead. He was sweating. Looking at the time on his bedside clock, it was morning. What? With his hand on his forehead, he didn't understand what that was, that dream. Although he had too many nightmares in the past, none felt as unpleasant as that one. Although he felt that sensation, he really doesn't remember what he dreamed. He only knew it was unpleasant enough to wake him up so early. Wait. Early? As he looked at the time again, he realized it was actually late. Didn't Asia wake me up? That seemed strange to him. Every day she came to his room and woke him up when breakfast was ready, but that didn't happen today. Knock, 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 knock. Issei, it's time to get up, you'll be late for the academy. As he heard his mother's voice on the other side of the door, he finished wiping the sweat from his forehead. I'll be out in a minute. Calming his breath, he heard his mother walk away from his door. Leaving his room, he entered the bathroom. Staring at himself in the mirror, he could notice slight dark circles under his eyes. Did that have something to do with it? He wondered if what happened with Rias yesterday could have caused him to have that unpleasant dream. As he wet his face with water, he took a towel. Drying his face, he glanced at his left arm, more precisely his wrist. His wounds had finally closed and only some scars remained. Although those scars were so unpleasant that anyone seeing them would immediately look away, it looked as if someone had passed a sharp rock several times over his wrists, leaving them in tatters. If you want advice, it would be best to tell the nun to use her sacred gear, so there won't be any scars. As he heard the voice of the Red Emperor Dragon in his head, he sighed lightly. She is no longer a nun. Besides, I don't want to worry her about something like this. It would only cause her problems. He usually wore shirts that covered his wrists even inside the house, so no one had suspected in the slightest, not even Asia. Only his parents asked him once why he dressed that way so suddenly, but they quickly forgot the subject. Tell me, what kind of dream did you have that made you scratch your wrist so compulsively that day? Issei, hearing that question, closed his eyes slightly to open them seconds later. It would be best to evade that question. He wouldn't understand even if he told him, and it could put his life at risk in case unnecessary information is leaked. I see I won't ask, although if you want I can help you so you don't do something so unpleasant again. I can manipulate your dreams so you don't have another nightmare, if it helps you in any way. Hearing the proposal of the Red Emperor Dragon, he fell silent, now that he remembered he had appeared in his dreams that day to introduce himself, although in his opinion he was very pretentious with that presentation. Anyway, if he did something like that, it wouldn't be strange that he can manipulate his dreams. If that made him stop dreaming unpleasant things, that would help him a lot. Okay, I entrust it to you. As he accepted his proposal, he looked at himself in the mirror again. At that moment he raised an eyebrow. It was strange that he didn't notice until now, but wasn't his hair longer? He should cut it soon. As he said goodbye to his parents, he left his house. Apparently Asia had left earlier for club activities, at least that's what his parents told him. This had happened before, so he didn't pay much attention to it, although it was the first time she didn't wake him up. Even so, it's not like she was his servant, even though she acted like one. As he arrived at the entrance of the academy, he stopped and sighed, knowing what he would have to face upon entering. After all, he didn't know how to approach this situation, as he felt uncomfortable with Rias. What he could deduce from yesterday's incident was that she probably wanted to lose her virginity due to an arranged marriage. You didn't have to be very smart to figure it out. They were demons. Having customs of this kind shouldn't be a surprise. Even in ancient times these things were normal. No, even in modern times it is possible to see these cases. Also, considering the great influence of Rias' family, arranging a marriage between influential families to increase their power would not be something rare, even if it is against the will of those involved. As that woman said, the name of the Gremry family is above all else. Even above the individual himself. Maybe that's why the only possibility she saw to get out of that marriage was to lose her virginity before getting married. Although, would that stop the marriage? Issei wasn't sure. He didn't know how important virginity was to demons. Although if Rias made that decision, it is likely that it really matters a lot. If he had cooperated, she probably could have gotten rid of that problem, although. Why should he cooperate? He has nothing to do with it. That was his thought. Why should he interfere in this in the first place? That was something that bothered him. If his deductions were true, which is very likely, why should he talk to Rias about it? They don't have any relationship close enough to be able to talk about it with total confidence, although. It seems she does trust you in that way. It was the Red Emperor Dragon who spoke to him, that was what bothered him. Why does she trust him in that way? If it were because of his sacred gear, he would understand. But she showed him that same trust even before she knew he had it. Even after discovering that he had a twice critical, which according to Sauna, was one of the most common, and although she didn't say it explicitly, it was one of the most useless. That was one of the reasons why Issei distrusted Rias in the first place. That she showed him that kind of trust in such a short period of time made him feel that she was pretending, that she was trying to deceive and manipulate him. That's why he didn't try too hard to have a minimally friendly relationship with her, he just saw her as someone who was helping him temporarily. Even with the student council president, you could say they are somewhat close, not enough to blindly trust her, but enough to waste time talking trivialities during recess. Although at first he resisted going to the library or the student council to spend recess with her, since he practically couldn't refuse, he eventually got used to it. You could even say that their current relationship would be a friendly one. That's because she didn't show such misplaced trust in him as Rias did. Ha! As he sighed, he decided to go. He needs to talk to her. As he was about to keep walking, suddenly he felt something on his shoulder. No, rather a small push. Someone had bumped into him. Be more careful, perverted beast-san. As he directed his gaze towards the person who bumped into him, he didn't recognize him at first, since he turned his back and kept walking after insulting him in that way, although he recognized him. I don't know his name, although I thought I saw him in the library once. It was obvious from the feeling he had that he was a demon. He also saw him a few times in the library. Wait, now that he thought about it, hadn't Sauna mentioned a new member of the student council? If that's the case, it wouldn't be strange if it was him. In fact, she had mentioned the name of that person before, although he didn't remember it. She told him that she would introduce him when he went to the student council again. As he sighed, he decided to ignore it for now, as he has better things to do. Besides, if he holds a grudge against him for something, they could resolve it when he goes to the student council. As he directed his gaze towards the direction where the club was located, he started walking there. Walking towards the club with a somewhat complicated look, he had finally arrived. Sighing, he touched the doorknob to enter. At that moment he stopped. He heard how someone from inside was approaching the door. "Issei-sama, what took you so long?" Upon seeing the person who opened the door, he recognized her immediately. It was that woman, Graphia, the maid who came to his house yesterday. She was dressed in the same way, besides having the same expression as yesterday, although this time he could notice a certain strange feeling when looking into her eyes. Although he couldn't say what it was. Wait, did she say she was waiting for him? He was going to speak, but suddenly he heard a voice in the back of the club. "A human?" It was a woman's voice. No, more like a teenager's. As he directed his attention to that voice, he noticed why his body tensed when he tried to open the door. In the occult club there were not only the people he knew would be here like Akeno, Rias, the knight, the dwarf and Asia. It could easily be said that there was now almost a crowd in this reduced space. There were more than 16 unknown people excluding Graphia, besides ignoring the fact that they were all women except the person who was sitting. All without exception were demons, and the person who had spoken a few seconds ago was one too. With nervousness, he calmed his breathing. Although the air in the club right now was really tense for some reason, he was calmer than he thought despite the amount of demons present here. Taking a quick look in the club, he could notice Rias sitting in front of a person he didn't know. Behind her was her entourage including Asia. Although everyone had serious expressions that could easily be confused with expressions of anger except Asia, who had a confused expression. Upon hearing the woman's voice, everyone paid attention to the entrance, putting their eyes on Issei. Having so many eyes on him, he felt very out of place. "Issei." Rias mentioned his name. Although at the moment they made eye contact, she immediately turned her face away, avoiding him. Noticing a slight blush on her cheeks, she was probably embarrassed about yesterday. The man in front of Rias put his attention on Issei. He had medium long blonde hair, dressed formally with black pants, white shirt and red jacket, with a not so attractive face, but not ugly either, and eyes that reflected full confidence in himself. He also had a well-formed body that he blatantly showed by not having the last button of his shirt buttoned. For Issei, the appearance of that person fit perfectly into the stereotype of juvenile delinquent. No, rather it was the living image of it. As they both made eye contact, he noticed that that person showed a very slight and almost imperceptible smile, as if he had been waiting for him. Did they know each other? No, that was impossible. He would never have forgotten his presence if that were the case. Easily the pressure he exerted on the rivaled that of Rias and Sauna, although it was far behind that of Graphia. Anyway, it was still a pressure too suffocating to forget from one day to the next, even with his poor memory. Taking the lead in the conversation was Rias, who spoke, standing up with determination and making noise with her hands as she got up. She looked straight at the stranger with a smile and spoke loudly, attracting everyone's attention to her. "You said that a rating game was unnecessary due to the weakness of my entourage, didn't you? Then this is perfect. If you allow Issei to participate, that can balance the scales." Upon hearing Rias's words, everyone fell silent. No one said anything. From the atmosphere, it seemed that no one expected her to say that, not even him. Noticing that the maid was looking at him, he fixed his gaze on her. She signaled him to enter the club as he was still at the entrance, obeying her. "Who is this human to begin with, Rias-sama? Even if he participates, he will be completely useless in battle, even if he has a sacred gear." Guided by Graphia, Issei positioned himself next to Asia and behind Rias, looking at the person who was complaining to Rias. It was the same person who had drawn attention to him a few seconds ago. "Besides, he's a third party. He has nothing to do here. He's not even a demon to begin with. His participation in the rating game is out of the question." The person who was complaining to Rias for having proposed something so out of place was a young girl of no more than 16 years old, with long blonde hair, with a somewhat extravagant hairstyle similar to two drills held by a purple bow, dressed in a pink dress with white decorations. For some reason, her voice sounded annoying to Issei, or was it not because of her voice but because of this situation? Wait a second, what they were discussing was about him participating in a raiding game. Blinking in disbelief, he couldn't let that pass. He doesn't even know what it is, but he wasn't here to participate in anything that has to do with them. He just came to talk to Rias. He's someone with whom I have something like a contract. Besides, you just said it, in your opinion, it won't change anything if he participates or not, so there shouldn't be any problem, right? Taking her gaze off the girl, Rias looked at the man who was sitting in front of her, with a cup of tea in his hand while his eyes were closed. He took a sip and then opened his eyes and looked at Rias. Issei couldn't stand this anymore. He had to clarify things or this woman would drag him into another problematic thing. Hey, I never said that, Pa. It's okay, I'll accept it. Being interrupted by the man's voice, he left the teacup on the table. That answer surprised Rias for having accepted so easily. The blonde-haired girl behind the man looked at him in disbelief. The same could be said of the other women behind him, although they didn't make it so evident. He continued speaking, standing up and walking until he stood in front of Rias, looking directly into her eyes. I won't accept that the human participates without conditions. Showing a playful smile to Rias, he slightly diverted his gaze towards Issei, swallowing a bit of saliva unconsciously. Feeling a bit of unease at feeling that gaze. Sitting down again, the man gave a look at Graphia, so that there would be no objections. If the two of you agree, there won't be any problem. Sir Zek-sama was expecting a situation like this, so there won't be any complaints, although before that I will have to evaluate if the conditions are favorable for both of you. Once you finish mentioning your conditions and I evaluate them, I will give you the date for the meeting. Having Graphia's approval, the man looked at Rias with a smile, knowing that he would have to offer something in return. Rias sat down angry and looked at the unknown man with annoyance. All right, what exactly do you want? Don't come up with some nonsense. While showing visible annoyance and clear hostility towards the person in front of him, Issei got tired of this. Exactly who did she think she was to do this without consulting him? Sighing loudly enough, he opened his mouth to clarify this once and for all, although he stopped again, as that guy started talking loudly again, irritating him more. Was he doing it on purpose? His patience was running out as he saw how things were unfolding without him being able to do anything. Although I couldn't intervene suddenly, that could put me in a complicated situation. I had to look for an opportunity to clarify things or it would be too late. What I'm asking for is quite fair. Dear Rias, even if you become my wife after the raiding game, your slaves will still belong to you. They even have total independence right now. You could even let them off the leash if you wish after the duel. As he looked with total arrogance at each of the people in Rias' entourage, especially Asia and Akeno, who showed a clear lascivious glow in their eyes, until he stopped at Issei, making his smile wider. If I win the raiding game, not only you, your slaves will also become my property. Setting that as a condition, all the members of the occult club showed, no longer the ambiguity between seriousness and anger, but pure hostility towards the stranger. Just like her slaves, Rias showed anger towards the man in front of her. Wrinkling her forehead, she knew that condition was not fair. She would reject it. It made no sense to even discuss something so absurd. She opened her mouth to reproach him and refuse, but was interrupted by a voice behind her. Hey, could you stop deciding for me? Idiot. Those were the words that resonated in the club, cutting the tense moment. Everyone fell silent. As they looked at the origin of the voice, they saw the brown-haired boy who had arrived a few minutes ago with his eyebrow trembling with anger and indignation. While all eyes were on him, he could see looks of surprise, indignation and even disgust, but he didn't care. He was fed up with this. Those words came out almost naturally when he heard what that guy was proposing, to let him participate in something he hadn't asked for. He had come here in the first place to clarify what happened yesterday, but now this girl had involved him again in another of her problems. I'll make it clear to you, Rias-senpai, I don't plan to get involved in your relationship problems. I won't participate in any raiding game, so those absurd conditions won't be necessary. From what the man had mentioned, he was Rias' fiancé. Analyzing his attitude so far, it's obvious why she doesn't want to marry him, but despite following the whole conversation so far, he didn't really understand almost anything, only that they were negotiating for him to participate in a raiding game. something he hadn't been consulted about in the first place. Also with a condition as unpleasant as that, even in a hypothetical case where he wanted to participate, he couldn't accept something like that, as it would be endangering Asia's integrity, since she belongs to Rias' entourage. So she would also be slave to that guy in case of losing, and you don't have to be very smart to know what kind of slave she would be. Looking at everyone's expression, he noticed that Rias had a surprised expression. Looking around the club, he made eye contact with Rias' fiancée. He showed a strange out-of-place smile when he looked at him, which he found very unpleasant. Sighing, he looked at the maid. "Can I go, right?" As that girl with the irritating voice said, "I have nothing to do here, since I'm not part of anyone's entourage nor am I tied to anyone." Waiting for Grafia's approval to let him out of the club, who from his perspective was the mediator in all this, he could hear a complaint from behind him. "Why how did you call me stupid human? Do you want to die right here?" With total indignation, the blonde-haired girl looked at Issei with anger. The other women behind her had similar expressions, although some showed interest instead of anger. "Grafia?" Calling the maid again, Issei spoke to her. Since Grafia hadn't said anything, she was silent, just watching the situation. When she finally opened her mouth to respond, she was interrupted. "Well, who would have thought that someone like you would end up being just a scaredy cat? Did I make a mistake with you?" Upon hearing this, she turned to see the person who had uttered those words. With a smile, the blonde-haired man with his eyes closed took a final sip of tea. Leaving the cup on the table in front of Rias, who was looking at Issei with notable embarrassment, he continued speaking. "Although I shouldn't be surprised by that attitude coming from a human." As he made that clear provocation, a vein popped out on his forehead. Although he shouldn't fall for something so obvious, he's not stupid. He was just trying to provoke him. "Issei-sama, if you want, you can leave. I won't stop you." As Grafia gave him free passage to leave, he began to walk towards the exit. He had nothing to do here. This was a matter of demons. He had no place in this situation. After all, he's just a human with a big mouth. Even if he participates in the raiding game, he'll be dead weight. No, even worse, just a punching bag. While showing her clear contempt for Issei for insulting her a few seconds ago, the blonde-haired girl continued to insult him as she headed towards the exit. Although I must say that I expected at least a hint of. When she thought about continuing to insult him, she felt a hostile gaze towards her. Turning her head, she noticed how Rias and the blonde girl behind her were looking at her with hostility. Swallowing a bit of saliva, she stopped her insults. Taking the doorknob, she decided to leave and head to her class when she heard something that stopped her. "The conditions were evaluated. The raiding game will take place in 10 days. Upon hearing those words, Rias immediately stood up out of instinct. "Grafia, what does this mean? I haven't accepted the conditions." Walking towards Grafia, she stood in front of her with her face distorted in anger. "As I said earlier, I have evaluated that the conditions are favorable for both. The raiding game will take place in 10 days. With cutting words, she dismissed Rias's words of indignation, shifting her gaze to the door where a practically frozen Issei was standing. She continued speaking. "The human has complete freedom to participate or not. It's his decision, although the conditions won't change. If Rias-sama loses against Razer Phoenix-sama, her pieces will become his. If Rias-sama wins, the marriage will be cancelled. That is Surzek-sama's will." Hearing the conditions for the raiding game, Issei immediately turned around. With a look of helplessness, he stared severely at Grafia. At that moment, he bit his lip. He felt nauseous due to the all-too-familiar sensation of this situation. After all, it was something he had felt before. It was the well-known and unpleasant feeling of being set a trap. "Did my brother order you to do this? It doesn't make sense. Why would he allow such absurd conditions?" Yelling at the maid in anger, Rias continued to reproach this absurd situation. From her point of view, none of this made sense. If Rias-sama is not convinced by the conditions, she can cancel the raiding game. Although in that case, there will be no opportunity to impose her will. She will have to marry Razer-sama without objections. Hearing this, Rias fell silent. She could only clench her teeth. What was her brother trying to achieve by doing this? Why was he putting her in this situation? She thought the rating game was a last resort he offered her to get out of this marriage, so why was this happening? Without answers, she fell silent. What should she do? If she lost, not only would she suffer, but also her entourage, her family. She couldn't allow that to happen. If she cancelled the rating game, the marriage would be sealed. Graphia, I want to cancel. Ha, it's okay, I'll participate. Being interrupted, she directed her gaze to the owner of that voice. Seeing an Issei with a bitter expression, he continued speaking. I'll make it clear, I'm not participating to help you, I'm only doing it for Asia. Besides, I can't stand that idiot having that triumphant smile any longer. Diverting his gaze to Razer, who was watching this whole situation in a fun way, as if he knew in advance how everything would unfold, he also returned Issei's gaze. Now that the date of the encounter has been decided, I have nothing more to do here, we're leaving. Getting up from the armchair, he headed towards the group of women, positioning himself in the center. Observing everyone in the club, he set his eyes on Rias. This is a temporary farewell, my Rias, we'll see each other in 10 days. And human-kun. As he looked into Issei's eyes, he showed a somewhat sinister smile, which made a cold sweat run up his back. Burning you in the duel will be a pleasure for me, you, who have no respect for demons. Snapping his fingers, a yellow magic circle appeared under him and the women. The blonde-haired girl who had insulted him a few seconds ago stuck out her tongue in a sign of displeasure, before flames enveloped them, making them disappear from the club. Chapter 19.5 Annoyance. With your permission, I withdraw. Disappearing from the club room through a white magic circle, the maid named Graphia said goodbye after making clear the conditions for the rating game, leaving the club room completely silent. Issei. Whispering that, Rias stopped. She couldn't find words to address him. After all, she had involved him, not only him, in a battle that had nothing to do with him, but also condemned her entourage in case of losing that battle. She was totally ashamed of her incompetence. Sitting in front of Rias was Issei, with his eyes closed. Next to him was Asia, who was uncomfortable looking down, because she noticed the tension between him and Rias. Both Kiba, Kaneko, and Akeno were standing behind Rias, with their eyes waiting for their mistress to speak. Having ordered her thoughts, she opened her eyes, got up from the armchair, looked at Rias for a second, then immediately looked at Asia. We're leaving. As he said that, he turned his back on Rias, calling Asia so that both of them could withdraw. Wait, Issei, we need to talk. Trying to stop him, Rias stood up and took his arm to prevent him from leaving. She wanted to apologize for having involved him in all this, also for having involved Asia, as she still remembers why she brought her to her that day. It was to protect her, so she wouldn't suffer. That was the reason why Issei sought her help for the first time he showed her trust. But now all that was in danger. If she lost, Asia would suffer, even his family would. She felt powerless for having allowed something like that. And I want to apologize for involving you, I really. Let me go. Being interrupted, Issei ordered her to let him go. He didn't even turn to look at her. With his arm trembling at hearing that, Rias let him go. Asia, will you stay there? Come. With a much more severe voice, he called Asia, starting to walk towards the exit. Asia immediately got up nervously, making a quick bow to apologize to Rias for Issei's attitude. Both of them left the occult club. Sitting down, she let out a painful sigh, biting her lip. She could only look down. She had ruined everything. President. Whispering that, Akeno watched Rias, looking at the expression on her face. Akeno knew that she could start crying at any moment. Hiding that expression, Rias spoke. I apologize to everyone. I never wanted to involve you in this way. I, as your mistress, have been completely incompetent. Clenching her fists and apologizing to her slaves, all she could do was look helplessly at the floor. Without even the will to look them in the eyes and apologize decently, she apologized in that pathetic way. President, you shouldn't apologize for that. We know you couldn't do anything to avoid it. Touching Rias' shoulder, Akeno tried to reassure her. Everyone in the club knew that much of the blame was not Rias's. Even Akeno believes that Issei knows it too, that Rias would never do anything to harm Asia or any member of her entourage. I'm with Akeno-san. Besides, if Grafia-sama and Surzek-sama accepted something like this, they must have some hidden motive, so you shouldn't be pessimistic. Supporting Akeno, Kiba also gave words of encouragement to Rias. The only way those perverted conditions are valid is if they beat us. The next one to support her was Kaneko, showing Rias a small smile. It's true, she was right. Right now the only way she has to get out of all this is by winning the rating game. It's not time to get depressed. She must strengthen her entourage enough to win this game. Having such limited time, she can't waste time thinking unnecessary things. But President, why did you do that? I'm talking about involving Issei-kun. Don't you think it was a bit unnecessary? Even though I know he did something impressive by killing a fallen angel, do you think it helps in the rating game? The one who spoke with some care was Akeno, as she really didn't understand why Rias involved Issei in something like this. Including the feat of killing that fallen angel and having a twice critical, she still didn't understand it. She could see how weak Issei was with a simple glance. He was comparable to the weakest pawn of Razer's entourage. No, she would even say that the weakest pawn would beat Issei. That's why she didn't understand why her mistress did something so reckless. Oh, that it's because of his sacred gear. She decided to talk about Issei's sacred gear with her entourage, as it would be necessary for the rating game. Knowing, complementing, and combining the power of each piece is one of the pillars to win. Besides, she couldn't say that the main reason is because she blindly believed that if Issei was by her side she could win. She would die of embarrassment if she admits something like that. Walking through the halls of the academy, he was heading towards the student council. He needed to talk to Sauna about everything he knows about what a rating game is. Issei-san, are you angry with the president? I don't think it's her fault. Walking behind him was Asia, speaking carefully not to bother him. She spoke sincerely about her thoughts on what happened with Razer. From Asia's perspective, the blame was not Rias's. Without saying anything, Issei remained silent. After all, he didn't want to talk about it at this moment, as he might say something unnecessary. That's why he left the occult club. He was angry enough to say something that could hurt Rias. That's why he was heading to the student council, as he needs essential information that he can't ask Rias for at this moment, when he's hot-headed. Approaching the student council, they could spot someone at the door, as if she was on guard. Recognizing her immediately, she also noticed them, watching them closely as they approached. When they were close enough, she spoke to them. Oh, but if it isn't the perverted beast, what are you doing here again? Insulting him, the brunette girl looked at him with annoyance but also with a touch of amusement. Don't tell me you've spied again in the girls' bathroom and that's why the president summoned you. TCH, you can't control your impulses, pervert-san. The girl who spoke with total rudeness had brown hair, with 2 pigtails on her head and green eyes that looked at him as if he were a complete pervert. Ruruko Nimura, right now I'm not in the mood to put up with your jokes. Is the president in? Ignoring the insults she threw at him, he asked if the president was inside. This is the best way to deal with this annoying girl. Simply ignore everything that comes out of her mouth. That's what he learned after interacting with her multiple times. Hey, who gave you permission to use my name so lightly? Now I feel disgusting, blag, blag. Making a vomiting grimace, a vein was marking on her forehead. They are undoubtedly water and oil. Even after talking to her several times, just hearing her voice, his irritation was present. About your question, yes, the president is inside, although you are forbidden to enter. Saying that, she extended her arms, blocking the way to the student council. His patience had reached its limit. I'm telling you to stop joking, get out of the way. Taking her by the shoulders, he tried to remove her from the door, although she resisted. Kaya, I'm being attacked, help Asia-san. Resisting to get out of the door, the two were pushing in opposite directions. With a vein on his forehead, Issei was trying with all his strength to remove her from the door, but she was still a demon, not a normal girl. Between the push and pull of the two, for anyone who was watching that scene from outside, it would look like two friends were simply playing in a very childish way. Issei-san, you get along very well with her, huh? Both hearing that stopped fighting for a second and looked at Asia at the same time. Of course not. Of course not. They both said at the same time. Chapter 20, Commitment. Hyoudo-kun? While he and the girl were apparently fighting outside the student council, a black-haired girl opened the door. Both of them turned to see her and left their little fight aside. Tsubaki-san. Mentioning the name of the girl who opened the door, she was the vice president of the student council. You two, what are you doing at the entrance? Not understanding why Issei and the girl were grabbing each other's shoulders and making a fuss outside the student council, she asked them that totally normal question. For some reason, when he glanced at Nimura, he could tell she was nervous. Tsubaki-san, we want to see the president, can we come in? Taking the lead to speak was Asia, who asked Tsubaki. Miss Asia, the president is inside, please come in. Leaving the way free to enter the student council, Issei let go of Ruruko and started walking towards the interior of the student council, although he noticed how the girl was silent, thinking of some excuse for him not to enter, but she couldn't think of anything and let them go with an annoyed face. In that way, both of them entered the student council, although he heard something on his back. Ruruko-san, what were you doing? The president will get angry if you make another fuss like that, understood? With a stern tone, Tsubaki stayed at the entrance with an annoyed face. While looking at the girl, she could only look away with embarrassment. Hyoudo-kun and Asia-san, what brings you both here? Watching as both of them entered, President Sauna left a cup of tea on her desk and looked at them with a smile. I needed to talk to you, can we sit down? Nodding, both of them sat down in two chairs that were in front of the president's desk. With a smile she spoke. It's unusual for you to come this way, did something happen? She looked at both of them with curiosity. After all, it was the first time they came together. You could say, Sauna-senpai, do you know what a rating game is? Sighing a little, he asked her. Sauna diverted her gaze to the entrance. Tsubaki, who had stayed at the entrance, had entered the student council to position herself at her side. Apparently she had finished scolding Nimura. Before talking about that, Hyoudo-kun, do you want to play a game? Appearing out of nowhere a chessboard on the president's desk, Issei wondered if that was some kind of magic. She always made a board appear out of nowhere. Although he has seen it many times, he wouldn't know. That's fine. Crossing his arms, Issei accepted the proposal. Maybe playing while they talk will relieve some of the stress he has at this moment. Moving the white pieces, the game started as well as the conversation. Are you adapting well to the academy, Asia-san? Speaking calmly, Sauna asked Asia a question, who was next to Issei. Why yes, I haven't had any problems, you have also been a great help. Showing gratitude with Sauna, Issei was a little surprised. He knew that the two of them knew each other because both Rias' clan and Sauna's clan must coexist in the academy. Besides, there was a certain meeting between both clans in the past due to something related to the familiars, something in which Issei did not interfere. But he did not expect them to get along well. Are you surprised? The president has been supporting Asia since she arrived at the academy with any doubts or problems she may have. After all, it is her duty as president of the student council. It was Tsubaki who spoke, looking at Issei with a small smile. I see. He said that while paying attention to the chessboard. Although the game had started a few seconds ago, none of his pieces had fallen yet. He has undoubtedly improved greatly in this game since the first time. But well, if after being massacred dozens of times by Sauna he hadn't improved at least a little, he wouldn't touch another board in his life, in any case. About the rating game, why are you asking? It's unusual for you to be interested in demon-related topics. Does it have to do with Asia? With a smile, he looked at Issei. She is still very perceptive. This was one of her most characteristic traits, and one of the most dangerous. Something like that. Have you heard the name Razer Phoenix? As he moved a piece, suddenly the president's hand stopped when she heard that name. The smile she had on her face disappeared. Now, with a more serious expression, she spoke to him. Could you give me the details? She asked him to tell her everything. I see, a rating game against the immortal bird to cancel the marriage, but what are these absurd conditions? With a thoughtful face and her brow furrowed, Sauna touched her chin. Issei told her about what happened in the occult club, also the details about the conditions. Although the most unusual thing is that you're participating, you, a human. I think I've never seen anything like this before. What are they planning with this decision? She couldn't understand anything about this unusual situation. She had never seen anything like it. A human participating in a raiding game of these characteristics? This was unprecedented. You also think it's strange that I participate? Tell me, does that guy, Rias's brother, have such a disgusting personality? Moving a piece, Issei asked Sauna that. Why he is participating in a raiding game, why Asia could become a slave of that guy. Everything was planned in advance and everything pointed to Rias's brother. Someone like that should have the worst possible personality. No, you're wrong, Hyoudo-kun. He's not like that. That's why even I'm surprised that he's acting in such a strange way. Sauna flatly denied Issei's words about Rias's brother. There must be something behind this decision. Stopping her hand as she was about to take a piece, with a thoughtful face, Sauna knocked down Issei's bishop. You wanted to know about the raiding games, didn't you? I'll give you all the details, although why didn't you ask Rias instead? It seemed strange to her that he was asking her instead of Rias. Oh, that. Slightly diverting his gaze, Issei fell silent for a second. When he was going to answer, it was Asia, who until now had said nothing, who spoke. Issei-san thinks that the president had something to do with it, even when she is so kind to him. Asia took courage to reproach Issei in front of the president. That was something that even impressed him. Hyoudo-kun, are you still thinking that? I thought I had resolved your doubts that day. Rias simply wouldn't do anything like that intentionally. She would first commit suicide by biting her tongue. Frowning, it seemed strange to Sauna that Issei thought she had conspired in some way. Maybe she wasn't clear that day. Or maybe Issei was just stubborn, which didn't contrast with the personality he had shown her these weeks. You're wrong, Sauna-senpai, you too, Asia. I know very well that she has nothing to do with it. Moving a pawn to the last square and turning it into a queen, Issei got rid of one of Sauna's rooks. It's really something different. I noticed it the first day she called me to the occult club and confirmed it today. Her personality is completely opposite to mine. Besides, being so unpredictable is a double-edged knife that I don't want to keep near my neck. The personality of the person named Rias Gremory was, in Issei's opinion, unpleasant. The only thing she did since they met was cause him problems. Although his opinion of her improved when she helped Asia, it was completely shattered when she involved him in this raiding game issue. But what he disliked most about her was not everything mentioned above, it was that she. I like that you're the rational type. Showing a smile, Sauna continued speaking. I don't like to comment on Rias's personality, but without a doubt, it's one that could get on your nerves if you're in her sights. Being careful with her words, Sauna shared her thoughts about Rias. You said you've known each other for a long time, right? You must know her better than I do. Recalling something she had mentioned some time ago, she noticed that she had also lost her rook. Yes, Rias is someone who doesn't like to lose. In fact, I'm sure that with these conditions on the table, she's not contemplating a scenario in which she loses. She's also very competitive. I suspect that's why she hasn't let go of you yet. She thinks I might bring you to my side. No, Issei knows that's definitely not the reason. But now that she mentions it, Sauna has stopped trying to convince him to join her entourage for some time now. Has she given up? At first, she was insistent, but as time went by, she stopped even mentioning it. You're wrong, I haven't given up on you. I won't let Rias snatch away something I've set my sights on again. I just don't want to overwhelm you with this kind of thing. Besides, this way I'm earning more of your sympathy than by insisting, right? Showing a cunning smile, she realized she had lost the game. Your level of play has risen a lot in such a short time. I would say you could easily stand up to Tsubaki. In any case, we've strayed from the main topic. Adjusting her glasses, she looked at Issei seriously. Raiding game is basically a duel between high-class demons based on chess. Both teams are composed of the king and his pieces, pawns, bishops, rooks, queen, and king. Just like in chess, in the raiding game if you lose your king, it's an instant end of the game. But unlike a board game, This is a real battle royale between demons. Just like in chess, the pieces have unique characteristics. For example, the bishop has the characteristic of having more magical energy. The rook has tremendous strength and defense. The knight has great speed and mobility. The queen combines all the previous characteristics together, and finally, the pawn has the ability of promotion just like in the original game, giving the possibility to acquire the abilities of the other pieces, although only if it can enter enemy territory. Therein lies the problem. You, a human, not belonging to a nobility, cannot obtain any of the aforementioned advantages. With a serious face, Sauna explained about the raiding game. I wouldn't want to offend you, although I know you're someone astute. I highly doubt you can do anything in the raiding game. After all, you'll be facing Razer Phoenix, someone who has never lost a game. Your weakness lies more than anything in your power. Trying not to offend Issei but being realistic, she concluded that it was useless for Issei to participate, he would only get hurt. Although she took into account his characteristics including his twice critical, she couldn't see a scenario where Issei would be useful. But you'll participate anyway, won't you? Getting up from the chair, Issei got the information he needed. There was no need to spend more time here. I appreciate the information. As you mentioned, I will participate. It's my responsibility. Turning around, along with Asia, they headed towards the exit. Asia made a small bow before leaving, and the two of them left the student council. He's always very cold with goodbyes, don't you think, Tsubaki? I should scold him when he comes back. As the president looked towards the exit where both of them had left a while ago, she asked a question to the person standing next to her. President, will you also get involved, won't you? Without saying anything, Sauna simply showed a smile. Opening the door, they ran into Nimura. Although she ignored her immediately, Asia said goodbye to her, and they both started walking towards the occult club. At that moment, he noticed a familiar face passing by his side. With an angry face, he looked at him for a few moments to pass by his side, ignoring him. At that moment, he heard something behind his back. Ruruko-san, I asked you not to leave him alone with the president. What could I do? The vice president looked at me in a terrifying way. Ignoring the chatter from their backs, they kept walking. While both were in the hallway, they ran into Rias, who was heading towards them, along with Kaneko, Kiba, and Akeno. Both stopped in the middle of the hallway. Looking at each other with serious looks, he simply sighed. There was no choice, they had to put their differences aside or they wouldn't be able to win the upcoming battle. Without addressing each other and looking into each other's eyes, they both agreed to cooperate for now. After all, a lot was at stake for both of them. HK. Being hit in his ribs, he recovered immediately and raised his guard, throwing a punch at his enemy. His hand was taken with ease. Weak. Throwing another punch with his other hand, it was also taken. With both hands being immobilized, the girl spoke again. Too weak, Issei-senpai, even though you boast a lot, you are really weak. After saying that, she let go of one arm to consequently punch him in the cheek, knocking him to the ground. Enough? Asking him, the girl looked at him with that characteristic expressionlessness of hers. No. He got up again, getting on guard again, he attacked again with his fists. This time the girl crossed her arms to receive his punches. 1, 2, with the last punch he managed to disarm the girl's defense. When he thought about hitting her in the face, she dodged his punch, took his arm, and threw him to the ground again. Is that enough, Issei-senpai? Being on the ground all dirty, with sweat all over his face and breathing heavily, he simply replied. Yes, this is enough. Closing his eyes, he admitted his defeat. 10 days, that was the time limit given to Rias' team to prepare. In 10 days they must train enough to catch up against an enemy with a lot of experience. In 10 days the fate of several people can be sealed, and in 10 days, if he wants to secure a complete victory, he must surpass the power of the low-class demons, the middle-class demons, and the high-class demons, to take the head of the king, Razer Phoenix. Ha, is that even possible in the first place? Whispering that, he simply lay down in the grass with his eyes closed. It's been a few days since they came to this secluded place to train. Physical and magical strength, Those were the types of training he had to go through in these short days, although he personally chose to face each of the members of the occult club on his own. After all, he has never been in a real battle on equal terms. He needed to get used to it, so these first days he decided to get used to fighting in general against weapons, martial arts and magic, although of course he only received beatings. Damn, Akeno-san is really a damn sadist. She's on the level of that crazy Yuuma. Touching the wounds he had on his body, Asia was by his side healing them one by one. After learning the basics of magic, he personally asked Akeno to have a training battle with him to gain more knowledge about the long-range attacks of the demons. Although more than a battle, it was a massacre. I'm done, Issei-san. The wounds are totally healed. With a smile, Asia made sure to treat all his wounds so far. Her sacred gear is a very useful one. It will be key for the confrontation. Is something wrong? If it's because of the time, I apologize. Noticing that she was quiet, he asked her. Right now both of them were in Issei's room, sitting on his bed. The night had already fallen, so it was time to sleep. He personally asked her to heal his wounds at this time, since she was in an exhaustive training with Rias about magic until very late, and he didn't want to distract her. It's not that, Issei-san. I'm grateful that you depend on me in this way, it's just that. Playing with her fingers, she continued talking. I'm a little scared about what might happen if we lose. Saying that, she looked at Issei. He immediately broke eye contact, due to the small stabbing pain he felt in his heart when he heard that. After all, it's largely his fault all this. Sighing, he looked at her. Don't think about things that won't happen. We will win that battle, I promise you. Touching Asia's shoulder, he tried to calm her anxiety. They wouldn't lose. He was almost sure of it. No, Issei wouldn't lose against them. He couldn't afford to lose this battle. Smiling at seeing Issei's face of decision, she spoke. Yes, I trust you, Issei-san. Noticing that she was still a little doubtful, he took her hand. According to what he had read, this was the best way to reassure people, besides a hug, although he doesn't want to make her uncomfortable. Noticing how Issei took her hand, she immediately blushed and got up from the bed. I am going to sleep. Running with embarrassment, Asia left his room. Did he just ruin it? Sighing, he lay down on his bed. He will have a busy day tomorrow. Blame God for putting a sacred gear in you. You, who the hell are you? Don't worry, Issei-kun, I'll treasure at least this necklace. Why did I kill them? Are you stupid? They intervened, but don't worry, I'll send you to heaven with them. Did you think I wouldn't notice the poison? Stupid. Leaving me planted and running away by train, do you think I'm not attractive? Issei-kun. Ha ha ha, I'm interested. How did you notice my nature, disgusting human? Hey Issei-kun, how does it feel to drown in your blood? Oops, sorry, please continue dying. You're not him. Even though you have his face, who the hell are you? Will you kill me? Ha ha ha, I hope to see it. Damn, if you keep choking him you'll kill Issei, let him go. Do you feel bad for involving them? Then pay for it with your life. What the hell is this, Issei? You're insane, why did you do it? Slowly, die slowly and enjoyably. I don't recognize you, it's like you're an imposter. Interlude. It was like a simple dream. A dream in which he cannot wake up, repeating a nightmare from which he cannot escape, no matter how hard he tries. A place resembling hell that he cannot avoid, no matter how many times he tries. Even if he runs, screams, begs, cries, it's a fate he cannot escape. A dream, that's how it felt the first time it happened, that's how the first reset felt, so he dismissed it as a simple dream. When he noticed the coincidences, he ignored them as simple déjà vu. When he felt the reset again, he ignored it again. When he realized the reality, he was no longer the same. Returning again and again, running again and again, trying again and again, until his mind broke. Unable to reveal anything, pretending to be someone he was no longer, ignoring the fragility of his soul, escaping again and feeling the reset again. Being dragged back to the beginning, feeling the same pain over and over again until resetting and repeating the cycle, gradually losing the sense of death, forgetting memories he considered valuable and replacing them with empty memories full of pain and resentment. repeating it over and over again until he stopped being himself, until he abandoned his feelings, until he abandoned his memories, until he abandoned his humanity, over and over again, until he stopped fearing death. Feeling an unpleasant sensation in his throat as if he were choking, his body immediately reacted, grabbing his neck to stop feeling that sensation. The dull noise of a fall was heard. He could feel the cold floor on his cheek, but he didn't care. The feeling of being choked persisted. His body kept fighting to get rid of that sensation, kicking as if he were under the sea, desperately seeking air, grabbing his neck as if he wanted to tear it off. Long seconds passed until the sensation finally gave way and disappeared. Opening his eyes with spit on his lips, he noticed he was in his room. Unable to get up properly, he sat on the floor. Apparently, he had fallen out of bed when convulsing. With difficulty, he lowered his gaze to his stomach. His organs were still in place. HAA. Breathing with pain, he looked at his room. His eyes turned around his room like a man looking for some change or something out of place. But he found nothing. Gathering strength, he got up. Looking at the clock next to his bed with teary eyes, he could see it. Turn N. Sitting on his bed and still with his hand on his stomach, he began to wipe the tears from his eyes with his left hand. At that moment he heard someone knocking on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Issei, it's time to get up, you'll be late if you keep sleeping. Hearing that familiar voice and those equally familiar words, Issei calmed his breathing to speak. I'm coming out, in a minute. Responding as relaxed as possible in this situation, he could hear a sound of confusion from his mother. Issei, are you okay? You sound sick, you can miss today if you feel bad. Wiping the last tears from his eyes, he responded much more calmly. And nothing's wrong, I'll be down in a second. Finally able to calm down, he heard his mother go downstairs. Coming out and seeing that no one was in the hallway, he immediately went into the bathroom. You'll also like Bedchem, Drew Starkey by Starkey's Women. Bedchem, Drew Starkey. 170k. 4.6k. In which, they'd have really good bedchem social media x real life. Naruto, copy system by Dragon 155913. Naruto, copy system. 430k. 24.6k. Reborn in the Naruto world, Shin Uzumaki finds himself in the doomed land of whirlpools. As a member of the Uzumaki clan, trapped in a world filled with war, betrayal, Behind the Mask 001XY/N fanfiction, by Deliana. Behind the Mask 001XY/N fanfiction. 444k. 10.9k. Y/N, a simple woman, joins the deadly games to pay off debts after her mother's death. Young Il, a heartless soul, controls the games, watching everything from afar. Will. My Secret Bad Boy Husband by JK_Lover777. My Secret Bad Boy Husband. 340k. 6.1k. Completed a mature content 21 plus no one under 18 smut part. Also add please watch on your risk why in a soft-hearted girl who have little space syndrome Junku Kabadba and a rich bra. One Piece, Talent Copy System. By Dragon 155913. One Piece, Talent Copy System. 669k. 31.6k. In the vast and perilous world of One Piece, where the seas are teeming with pirates, marines, and untold mysteries, a young man is given a second chance at life. Reincarnation. Guilty as Sin? J.J. Maybank by Peter Parkers. Guilty as Sin? J.J. Maybank. 99.9k. 4.9k. Locking the door, he was able to relax. Looking at himself in the mirror, he noticed the mess his face was at this moment. His neck was injured. He even had a little blood when he desperately tried to stop the sensation of choking on his own blood. He had snot and tears all over his face. If he had shown this to his mother, she would have made a scene. He cleaned his face with water and removed the blood from his neck. Looking at himself in the mirror again after finishing, he smiled. This will work, I think. Massaging his cheeks with his hand, he tried to make the Issei Hyoudo, mask perfect. Looking at himself in the mirror, proud to see that it was almost perfect, he left the bathroom. Thus beginning his 45th week. Leaving his house without any problems, he looked at the streets, the houses, the people. The only thing he felt was repulsion when he saw his surroundings. After all, nothing has changed. With a serious look, no, rather disinterested, he headed towards the academy. Arriving at his classroom, he could notice how the looks were directed towards him. Ignoring the unpleasant murmurs that were gradually spreading in the room, he sat in his usual place, thinking about what he should do this week. While he had his gaze lost in the window, two people started to approach him. "Hey Issei, Motohama got the latest from Momo-chan," came in Rider Pinky. "It's super exclusive. We thought about watching it at his house after school. You'll come with us, won't you?" What should he do first? When classes are over, they will meet at the bridge. That was something that could not be avoided. If he took another path, whatever it was, she would find him and ask him that question. If he managed to completely avoid her and never meet her, she would come to his house and kill him with a light spear. In fact, that happened in his previous death. He hid in his room and died drowned in his own blood. "Hey Issei, answer, will you come?" In the attempt prior to that, he tried to escape by train to another city. When the train stopped and the doors opened, there she was, smiling as always, with her characteristic uniform that he did not recognize and her eyes that showed kindness. He died pierced with a spear that day. Are you listening? Issei. Think, he must think or he will die. The sensation of death did not matter to him at this point. Only the pain terrified him. If suddenly this death loop stops and he dies definitely, he would thank God for his kindness. The idea of dying was something coveted in this endless hell. Dying without waking up again became a longing for him at this point. He no longer wanted to run in such a desperate way. Do you think ignoring us will make you more popular with the girls? He heard a scream in his ear while he was lost in his thoughts. Looking at the responsible, he found his friend, Matsuda. Oh, sorry, were you talking about the DVD, right? It's okay, I'll go. He affirmed something he had heard before with a big smile. Good, Issei, we'll meet at the usual place at recess. Nodding to Matsuda without even turning to look at him, Issei kept thinking he had to find a way to escape from this death cycle. Will trying to travel to another country work? Although he does not have enough money to do that. Blame God for putting a sacred gear inside you. Again he is being pierced by a spear. This attempt was also a complete waste. With blood flooding his throat, his body began to convulse. He is drowning again. He tried to turn around to avoid it, but when he did, he noticed that his hand was shattered. He did not have his arm from the elbow down. When she threw the light spear at him, he desperately tried to avoid it, only to cause both his stomach and his hand to disappear. Although Issei-kun, don't worry, I will treasure these earrings you gave me. Speaking with total cheek, she showed him her ears that had turquoise earrings. While he was drowning, he could only look at her with pure rancor while she smiled. He tried to curse her, but he could not, since his heart had stopped beating. His head had stopped processing information. He died.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.